Good evening. This is the Legislature Today radio show. We're broadcasting live from the Peacock Alley in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota. My name is Dale Wetzel. I'm the managing editor of the Great Plains Examiner and the host for this evening. We're going to be talking about a recent merger of two of North Dakota's largest public employee associations, the North Dakota Public Employees Association and the North Dakota Education Association. We're going to be talking about that tonight in our first half hour. We have with us as guests Mr. Dakota Draper, the North Dakota Education Association president. He's serving his third and final two-year term. And we have Mr. Gary Feist, the president of the North Dakota Public Employees Association. First, we'll go through a little summary of what went on in the legislature today. There were a number of tax bills voted on in the North Dakota House this afternoon, and most of them were defeated with one exception, which is somewhat notable because the House approved a particular tax break for the wind industry over the objections of both the House Republican Majority Leader, Al Carlson, and the chairman of the Finance and Taxation Committee, whose name is Wes Belter. One of the bills the House defeated was a two-year suspension of the North Dakota income tax. This would have taken effect this year and next if it had passed. It was introduced by Representative Scott Lauser. He's a Republican from Minot. He advertised it as a way to kind of test drive a repeal of the North Dakota income tax for 2 years, see how state government could get along without $1 billion in revenue over 2 years. This proposal was defeated 63 to 23. All of the proposals that were defeated that I'm going to be mentioning lost by close to two-thirds votes, although it was not quite that large in terms of a couple of them. Another proposal that went down that's gotten some public attention recently was an income tax credit for people who rent their homes or apartments. This would have been a benefit on the income tax form for renters of up to $360 annually. It would have meant $62 million less in collections of income tax over the next 2 years. This was sponsored by Grand Forks Representative Lois Delmore. She's a Democrat from Grand Forks. This lost 57 to 29. Lois Delmore argued on the House floor that renters have not benefited from a state emphasis on buying down income taxes over the last 2 years, last 6 to 8 years, that these savings in income taxes for commercial property owners have not been passed along to their tenants. We also had a proposed $400 one-time income tax credit for anyone living in North Dakota for the past year. This would have meant approximately $212 million in tax credits distributed to North Dakota resident income taxpayers. This bill was sponsored by Grand Forks Representative Elliot Glassheim. He is a Democrat, and it was just a one-time tax credit, and it lost. Mr. Glassheim argued that this was preferable to a permanent income tax cut because we have the money in hand to present a income tax credit, and it would not mean a permanent loss of revenue in terms of the lowering of income tax rates or the abolition of the income tax entirely. One notable exemption or one notable exception to this string of defeats was a sales tax exemption for wind projects. And this bill sought to extend a sales tax exemption for construction of new wind farms, which is set to right now to expire in June of 2015. This bill would extend that exemption to June of 2017. This will mean approximately $24 million less in sales tax collections over 2 years. This passed in the House 55 to 33. It's now going to the Senate to see if the Senate will go along with that. What was notable about this debate is that the House Majority Leader, Republican Al Carlson, and the Republican chairman of the House Finance and Tax Committee, Wes Belter both spoke against this bill. They said that the wind energy industry has grown quite a bit over the last years. It is a mature industry, and it doesn't need this tax break to stand on its own anymore. Well, several legislators objected to this interpretation. One of them said that this tax break was entirely in keeping with North Dakota's efforts to establish a good business climate, and the bill was approved, which was interesting because both Mr. Carlson and Mr. Belter made lengthy speeches against passing it. In the Senate, there's one bill of note. It approved 3 judgeships in North Dakota starting this year. Right now we have 44 district judgeships. This would take it to 47. There would be 1 judgeship in Fargo and 2 in the Northwest District, which includes Williston and Minot. This is where most of the judicial workload growth has been with the expansion of the oil industry in western North Dakota. There are also cities in the district, Watford City and Stanley, which used to have resident district judges but no longer do, and maybe we will go back to the future and have them there again, although the Supreme Court will have the final say as to where these positions go. With that in mind, we would like to speak about the recent merger of the North Dakota Public Employees Association and the North Dakota Education Association, which was approved formally last weekend. I should say it was approximately a week ago. It was the first Saturday, I believe, in February. This merges, I believe it is the 2 largest public employees associations in North Dakota. And we have here with us Dakota Draper, the president of the NDEA, the North Dakota Education Association, and Mr. Gary Feist, the president of the North Dakota Public Employees Association. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Mr. Feist, could you please tell me, how did this, I'll get both of you to address this question, how did this get started?
I think our 2 organizations have worked together for a number of years, including at the legislature, and then in 2008, when there were some initiated measures and constitutional amendments on the ballot, our organizations worked as a coalition along with other organizations across North Dakota to voice our concern about funding issues for the state that would affect public employees and education.
And how did it start? How did that result in merger talk, so to speak?
It progressed as we went along. In terms of, first of all, in 2009 we had a cooperation and consolidation agreement, which basically was a no-rate agreement. Unlike some states in North Dakota, the NDPEA is an affiliate of the American Federation of Teachers, and the NDEA is an affiliation of the National Education Association, the 2 major, great national groups in terms of education. And we just started talking about, and other states have done this, what would happen if we could do that here? What would be the advantages? And we started looking at trying to have where could this go, and is it something good for us? And we kept coming up with the answer as yes. This is something that would help both associations become a better association. And so we worked in terms of that regard, trying to bring that about. But it was a very long process. Other states have had difficulty between the NEA and the AFT affiliate, and we don't have a history of that here in North Dakota. So we had that going for ourselves to begin with.
And what's the new organization going to be called?
It's going to be called North Dakota United.
Just North Dakota United?
Just North Dakota United.
How was that name chosen?
That was after a very long process, it seemed like. Gary, you want to talk?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion of what the name should be, and several names were thrown out, but that one seemed to stick because we're coming together to form a united voice of all public employees, teachers, and so that's why we wanted to make it say that we were united.
How were there any objections to the name North Dakota United? Like, it doesn't really say what is being united.
Well, yeah, there were people that still question it, and that it's. We thought it would come along with a great tagline: "United for North Dakota schools, North Dakota families. You could do a number of things. So that was one of the ideas that went along with that. And that tagline hasn't really been developed as such, but as a lot of things in terms of as we move forward with this process.
And what is the governance of this new organization going to be?
Very similar to what we have right now. We'll have a board of directors. There'll be a president. There'll be two vice presidents, a president for education-related professionals and a president for public employees, vice president for Public Employees Association professionals.
And the president will be from which organization?
Oh, to begin with, he'll be from our side, and that's really a practicality thing because I'm full-time release to have this position, and Gary here is not, and so it's felt that we should have someone who can have full-time release to do this job.
When your term is up, will the NDEA president continue to be the president of the North Dakota United organization?
Yes, when their organization will elect a new president in April, and that president will then serve as the president of North Dakota United when the actual merger becomes official on September 1st.
Is the board going to remain the same size?
Well, there'll be a 3-year transition. It's not like we're on September 1st of this year, we're going to just automatically become everything we were going to intend to be. There'll be a gradual process getting us to that point. At first, there'll be a 19-member transition board, and then eventually it ends up being a 21-member board of directors.
What are the sizes of your respective organizations now?
We're about 8,500 members, and NDPEA is about 1,700 members.
Was there any resistance from NDPA on these grounds that you're kind of being swallowed by the bigger organization?
No, I think our members were very excited about coming together. We've always been, as our national affiliate being the American Federation of Teachers, we've been a part of a teachers organization, and our members, we represent a lot of higher education faculty and staff. So we do have a lot of people in the education profession within our organization, and we believe that this will help our members on the higher education side as we work with K-12 teachers to prepare students and the citizens of North Dakota for higher education and how important education is, which will also support public employees. A lot of our members, the state wouldn't operate without public employees there to take care of the most vulnerable, keep the roads open. Like this last weekend when it was storming, all the snowplow drivers were out there, and our people are doing the jobs that need to be done to keep North Dakota a great place to live.
Are there areas where your two organizations' interests diverge? And if so, how did you work through those?
Well, diverge, I don't know. We both have a heavy interest in the political process in terms of the legislature. We both try to work bills to the advantage of our memberships through the legislature and combat those that we think are not to our advantage of our members. In terms of I diverge, we both have a good example of that is the interest in the pension bill, our pension plans, keeping those solvent, keeping those strong. I'm at a loss. Gary, do you have any?
I can't really think of anything where we diverged. I think we've worked together, like I said, at the legislature on issues that we thought were important to the members we represent, and also the citizens of North Dakota to make sure they had the highest quality public services being provided. And I think that's been our focus, and that's where we continue to look forward to make sure that we're able to provide those high quality services.
Are you going to have to cut overhead? And if you have two organizations that merge, are you going to have to cut overhead?
This is one area that we had complete agreement on is that the work is so immense that the staffs, when they combine, we're not going to let anybody go. We're going to keep everybody. We have more than enough work for both the NDPEA staff and the NDEA staff.
And where's your headquarters going to be?
It'll be here in Bismarck.
Is it going to be in one building?
Yes.
Or two?
It'll be in the building. It's only a couple blocks from here. The NDE.
You're going to use the
right now the NDEA building.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And how do you expect this will help you maybe to grow your membership?
You want to start?
Well, I think it will help us grow our membership, showing that we're strong and we're united, and through that united voice, we're able to reach out to not only public employees, and education professionals, but also to the public, so they realize that the services that we're providing are really important. And with that stronger voice, our members will feel like they're being heard at the legislature and throughout the normal working lives of people in North Dakota.
What was if I could add
go ahead, please.
To that, I think with our both memberships, we've told our members that with this merger, they'll be members of both national associations now. They'll be members of the AFT and the NEA. And I think that helps attract, both of those two organizations have strengths that complement each other. And so now we have access, and our members will have access to the resources of both those two great national associations.
How are those organizations different, the national organizations?
Well, they're a little bit different in terms. I've gone to some of the AFT events, and Gary's gone to some of the NEA events with us. They do their governance a little bit different. The NEA Representative Assembly is a little more wide open, where the AFT Representative Delegate Assembly is a little more centered around particular issues. But there isn't a lot of difference. There's some, yes, but I don't think enough that makes it too terribly hard to overcome.
Are you going to have any other sort of national public employee union affiliations? I'm thinking like of AFSCME or anything like that.
With us in here in North Dakota?
Yes.
I mean, there's no intention of that at this time.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I don't know if they have that much of a presence in this state.
What was the nature of the debate leading up to the merger amongst the membership? What sort of questions were raised and how were they answered?
Well, I think in terms of our members, it was something new. It was something that was different. How is this going to benefit? Dues certainly were going to be an issue that they wanted to talk about. It was, what is the AFT? What exactly do they do? Why would we want to be a part of that? And it was trying to address that was a lot of education, trying to bring folks into the idea that this is something that was a win-win, and we strongly believe that it is a win-win for both of our members in terms of that.
You mentioned dues. What are the dues of the new organization going to be, and how do they differ from what the members of the two organizations are paying now?
Well, that's a big, long question to answer. Gary, you want to take a...
Well, I think for the transition, we're starting out with kind of what we already, our members' dues currently are. And so there'll be a time for the members for the North Dakota United to come together and decide what we think the dues actually should be. And the focus of the organization will be, maybe organizing, and that may require some additional dues money to get out there and talk to those public employees and education professionals who aren't members of ours to show that we're a new organization. Here's a chance for them to join us, and we need to get out there and reach out and talk to all those potential members.
Is it going to be cheaper to belong to this organization, or more expensive, or about
It'll be
the
a
same?
little bit more expensive, but it's not as much as some people might indicate, because it's kind of for the price of one organization, you get to belong to two organizations. They don't pay separate national dues to the NEA and separate national dues to the AFT. They'll pay one and get to belong to both.
Okay, if I'm going to join, if I'm a public employee, I want to join North Dakota United, what's it going to cost me?
Public employee, the dues currently are going to be $37 a month. Depends on your salary. We have a sliding scale, so it ranges anywhere between the $18 to $37.
So it's $18 to $37 for NDPEA?
Yeah.
Okay. How about the North Dakota Education Association?
Well, I think it'll end up being around, what, $43
per month?
Per month.
Okay.
I'm trying, yeah.
I mean, is there going to be a unified dues payment, or are they still going to be different in terms of which?
Well, that's a 3-year transition.
Okay.
That's not going to happen overnight.
Okay. I wanted to ask you gentlemen both about what you think of the governor's pay plan. First of all, could you describe it and tell me what you think of it?
Well, I think the governor's pay plan for public employees is a continuation of trying to move towards market. With the Hay reports that the state needed to find a way to get closer to market to be able to recruit and retain its quality staff that it has. And so I think the governor's proposal, where there is some component of paying for merit and also a component of trying to pay people for the compression problems that we may have seen as we have to hire people at a much higher salary than we used to. And so people who have been there a long time are now making the same as people that are coming in. And so they're trying to make a movement to spread that out a little bit and also pay people for the quality job that they're doing.
And how does this, what do you think, Dakota, of the governor's education bill, specifically the idea that there's going to be a lot more state money in local education, and also the minimum teacher salaries are going to be increased somewhat?
We're very supportive of the governor's efforts. Just for everybody's information, I've been away from the state for a week, so I'm trying to catch up today. But what I understand is that the governor is, his numbers in terms of what he's proposing to move into education, we're very supportive of that. And we are also very supportive of moving up teacher salaries. We think that there's a good argument to be made that if we need to attract good people into education, we need to move the salaries up higher than where they are right now, because otherwise we're not going to get what we really want. We want good people to try to become educators.
Okay, just one more thing. Okay, Mr. Feist and Mr. Draper, let's act like I'm a person that you're trying to sell me on joining North Dakota United. How are you going to make that pitch to me?
I think we have a vibrant organization that's going to be out there working on your behalf, trying to organize members. There's a key phrase, organizing members to get a lot of good things done. And not just done for the member, but get things done for North Dakota Public Schools, North Dakota Public employees, public institutions.
And get them to understand that, there's the more people you have, the stronger voice you might have in North Dakota for public employee issues. And like I said, and to make sure that we're going to continue to see public services provided to the citizens of North Dakota.
We've been speaking this evening to Mr. Gary Feist. He's the president of the North Dakota Public Employees Association. He's the gentleman whose voice you just heard. We've also been speaking to Dakota Draper, the president of the North Dakota Education Association. These two organizations are merging in September to form a new organization called North Dakota United with more than 10,000 members. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the Legislature Today radio show. We have, on our second half hour, we have three gentlemen who are going to be discussing legislation to strengthen North Dakota's laws against driving under the influence. We have Mr. Dave Elke. He's a Republican from Devils Lake, a state senator. We have Senator Kelly Armstrong of Dickinson. He is a Republican. He is a new member. We also have another new member, Democrat Tyler Axness of Fargo. And Mr. Armstrong, could you explain to us what this bill does? I understand that it incorporates ignition interlock devices for people who are convicted of driving under the influence, and also there's a provision to issue a kind of a scarlet letter driver's license to these folks so that they have more difficulty buying alcohol.
Shows you what he knows, huh?
Yeah. Actually, that was some language that was proposed in the original bill. The bill that actually came out of the Transportation Committee with a unanimous do pass is significantly different than the original bill, and those things are not in the bill in its current form.
Okay. What's in the bill now?
In the bill in its current form is we essentially, for real short, we double fines and jail time for second and subsequent offenses. First offenses have a minimum mandatory sentence only above a 0.18 blood alcohol level. Some of the key factors of the bill that came out of the Transportation Committee is, one, compliance in the 24/7 program. We did ask for a study resolution on interlock devices, but North Dakota currently uses the 24/7 program, and it has been effective when it has been used. And so in order to implement something without reinventing the wheel, we're using the 24/7 program versus the interlock at this point.
And can you tell us what is the 24/7 program?
The 24/7 program currently is used primarily as a condition of bond release before trial, and it's either testing twice a day at the jail while you're waiting for your case to be disposed of. or you put a scram bracelet on, and that reads blood alcohol in your skin. And this is now being implemented, as it came out of transportation, it's being implemented as part of the sentence for second and subsequent offenses.
So just so that I'm clear, this doesn't have a mandatory jail term for first-time offenders?
It has mandatory 2 days in jail above a 1.8 blood alcohol or community service.
Okay.
Give the judge a little discretion.
Mr. Axness, what is your opinion of the direction this bill has taken?
Well, as my colleague Senator Armstrong said, these changes and this bill were unanimously accepted within the Senate Transportation Committee. Excuse me. I think we've been mandated by the people in North Dakota to actually make forward progress on this. I think Senate Bill 2240 is a good step in the right direction. It allows, as Senator Armstrong said, some flexibility in the sentencing, especially for first-time offenses, but it does double the penalties and for second-time and third-time offenses, and I think that's the kind of deterrent we need. There's more that can be done at the front end, but I think this is a good start.
Mr. Elke, what's your view of these changes?
Well, Dale, when I first got into the legislature, the rule was that 1 of 10 people driving on the roads at that time were intoxicated or under the influence of some kind of drug. And we have seen some serious injuries, and there's been a couple nasty things that happened in the last year or two that really drew people's attention to it and pulled at the heartstrings. And so there is a lot of encouragement right now to change things and get a little bit tougher. One of the things we really wanted to do was try to do something that actually worked. And the initial bill that we saw that came into our Transportation Committee really was so restrictive that it was going to create all kinds of problems for the process. Number one, it was going to make the initial first-time fines so harsh that everybody was going to go out and get an attorney and fight it and want a jury trial. And so if you can imagine yourself as a state's attorney, and I'm not one, but you've certainly talked to a few in the last few weeks, and the idea that they might all of a sudden have to be dealing with another 2 or 3 jury trials on a fairly frequent basis. In some parts of the state, that might be every week. What was going to happen is a lot of those DUIs are going to get reduced to reckless driving, and there was nothing going to happen to these folks, even though they were driving under the influence. And so the initial bill itself was so tough that it was not going to do the job that it was intended to do. So what we did is, with the help of these 2 senators here, plus the rest of the Transportation Committee, is we put in quite a few hours trying to come up with a product that actually has the potential to do some changes and actually save some lives at the same time. The scram bracelet that they're talking about, and I'll have to depend on one of these 2 guys to remember what SCRAM means, but I can describe it to you. It is a waterproof, weatherproof bracelet that goes on your leg, and believe me, it's not pretty. It's not as big as your headphones are, but it's significant in size, and it can tell if you had a drink. So this not only says you shouldn't drink while you're driving, this scram bracelet will send out a message if you have a drink. So this is a deterrent to drinking alcoholic beverages, and none of the other 2 bills that are out there didn't address that issue at all. And so we really thought that was important. If we're going to make a difference and we're going to save lives and have the potential for actually getting someone off of being so addicted to alcohol, this was a way that we have a fighting chance to do it.
Mr. Armstrong, you have experience as a defense attorney. When you saw this bill initially with the ignition interlock provisions and the driver's license and the fines, the punishments for folks who are accused of driving under the influence, what did you think in terms of how that approach would work? And why do you think that this approach is superior?
When I saw it originally, my first thought is my business is going to pick up a lot. I think Senator Elke hit it on the head. There's a lot of big and bold ideas, and if the intent was to get us talking about this issue, it succeeded. The problem is as a defense attorney and as somebody who's practiced in this area, I would never, ever plead a DUI again. And when you're dealing primarily with state's attorneys, I mean, there's a lot of city prosecutors too, but by the time you get to jury trial, they're still in district court. I think that's one thing people don't necessarily understand, is even if you're dealing with the city prosecutor, the jury trial's held in district court. So what I thought was, oh my, we're going to have a lot of DUI trials, like 5 a week all the time in my district.
And what did you think about what this would do to the judicial workload in terms of being able to get other stuff taken care of in the courts?
Well, resources are fungible. If this is what is going on, what I think would happen, and I think Senator Elke hit it on the head, is in smaller communities where they're overworked and they have law enforcement law enforcement openings and they have state's attorneys issues and full court dockets, I think the real likelihood was you would start seeing a lot of reckless drivings on DUIs that weren't reckless drivings before.
Mr. Axness, as you're aware, when this kind of debate started, this was even before the legislature began, there was a big, frankly, a splashy press conference in West Fargo about a particular bill that is in the House, and one of the selling points of that bill was we're going to have mandatory jail sentences for first-time offenders. And this bill, as Senator Armstrong described it, there is a mandatory jail sentence for a first-time offender, but only if that person is 0.18% or greater. What do you think the reception is going to be to the idea that a first-time offender still may not have to serve any time in jail?
All right. Well, for your listeners that might not know, District 16, the district I've been humbled to actually come out here and represent, is half of West Fargo. I was part of the grieving process with my neighbors and friends when the Deutscher family, unfortunately, was killed by a drunk driver. There is a lot of demand out of that community and neighboring communities to get something done. And, when we're talking about deterring drunk driving, it's important to look at penalties, but I think one thing that's kind of missing from the conversation in some of these bills is what are we doing to prevent the behavior outright? I think there is some real credibility behind what Senator Elke and what Senator Armstrong said about weighing down the judicial system or corrections facilities by putting everybody into the jails that are already overcrowded in the state because of various reasons, whether it's increased population or perhaps some outdated penalties that we currently have. With that, I think we need to also take a step back, like I said, and look at the preventative measures. And, there's been a couple instances out here that we've unfortunately have failed at. Earlier this session, there was a Senate Bill 2301 that I jotted down, which would have provided an appropriation to provide grants to schools to prevent underage drinking and driving while impaired. The appropriation was less than $500,000, and if we were to actually act on some of these preventative measures, I think in the long run we're going to save some of these jury trials that could potentially have happened by preventing the behavior in the first place. So, yes, I think we need to have strong penalties. I think there is just the reality that there's sometimes we tend to maybe overdo things when it comes to, like, if the original bill was mandatory jail time, and people want that, but we need to be rational about this and see if we have the capacity to do that at this point.
Mr. Senator Elke, what is your belief as to how the public reaction is going to be if there does continue to be penalties for first-time offenders that do not include jail time if they are below a certain blood alcohol threshold?
Well, Dale, I think if they take the time to visit with us and understand what the process is and what we're trying to do with this, it's not every first-time offender that offends again. We all know people that have offended one time And believe me, they never, ever did it again. Statistically, they tell us, of course, I don't know if this is real hard science because I've never run into a highway patrolman that lived in the same part of the state for his 30 years of employment. You know, they typically are here for 5 years or 7, and they move around so they can get promoted. So their reference level is not always the same. But the stats behind this tell us that about a third of the people that get a first DUI have the potential to get a second, and maybe even more after that. So the idea that you use the same brush to paint everyone the first time doesn't personally make a lot of sense to me. But some of the things that we put into this bill, in addition to, just some increasing the fines a bit on that first time, some mandatory jail time. Correct me if I'm wrong, Senators Axness and Armstrong, but I think we've got some areas in here where we want them using treatment facilities to reduce fines. And I'll tell you what, if we didn't do it this way and we put in mandatory jail time, the impact on our state correctional facility is incredible. South Dakota has tougher rules than we do right now. But you know what their jail numbers are? Throw them out there, boys. What is it? South Dakota's got what, 4,000 people in jail right now in their state correctional facility, and we have 1,800. And
I think it's less than that, actually. I think it's whatever.
Well,
it's not 4,000.
But the numbers show that if we put this into force in 2 or 3 years, we're going to have 800 more people in this state pen out here, and at X number of dollars a day. And I'm not saying that the money's important. It's really not. But how many criminals do you know that go to a hardcore facility like that come back nicer, gentler people? The program that we have here has a better way to do it. In South Dakota, we've seen testimony from South Dakota and have communications from them saying it's better to keep it local, keep them in your communities, do the scram bracelets, do the counseling, do the interventions, and try and rehabilitate these folks and make good drivers out of them. We can do that without beating the crap out of them.
Mr. Armstrong, Senator Armstrong, you mentioned that the original iteration of the bill would have increased your business fairly substantially. What will this iteration of the bill do to the willingness of folks to admit, to plead guilty, to not insist upon a trial?
Well, without getting incredibly mechanical in this situation, I think and I just want to piggyback off the South Dakota thing, because they've raised their offenses. They've done a lot of these things over the last 15 years. In 2008, they implemented their 24/7 program, and that is where they give restricted licenses as part of a condition of probation with the. Because in North Dakota, for second and subsequent offenses right now, we have what are called hard license suspensions. So you cannot drive anywhere. South Dakota's implemented this in 2008, and even after everything they've done in the past, this is what's showing their significant drop in DUIs. The data backs up this program. Since 2008, depending on who you ask, you have between a 10 and 17% decrease in DUIs in South Dakota. And that's based primarily behind the implementation of the 24/7 program. So that's one of the things, because the 24/7 program is tied to what is called the Department of Transportation administrative hearing, which is where your license suspension occurs under current law. And the 24/7 program, as implemented in this bill, is going to say if you are sober, we're going to let you drive to work. We're going to let you keep doing those things, but we're going to know you're sober because we're testing you 24/7, 365. And I think that's, not only do we come down harder on second and subsequent offenses and even first offenses with fines and stuff, but we also incentivize sobriety in this bill, which is a big, big deal. And the data also shows that for first offenses, most of your accidents and fatalities happen at 1.5, 1.6 or higher. The reason 1.8 is in this bill is because it's what's under current law, and it fits so many other areas of the code. So that's part of what's going on there.
I wanted to ask you, to what extent do you think someone having to go through the 24/7 program where you have to be tested, as I understand it, every day to see if you're drinking, and I want you other gentlemen to respond to this too, to what extent is that going to be a deterrent to to having a subsequent offense? Because I imagine that going in to be tested every day for alcohol use or wearing a scram bracelet is going to be quite memorable experience, almost as memorable as being in the Hooskow.
You know, just real quickly, you said something about the scarlet letter on the license plate, but if you have a second DUI, you're going to have a scarlet letter right around your ankle if you want to continue to work. Actually, even if you don't, it's going to be a mandatory condition of probation for a second offense. So, yeah, I would expect that'll have a deterrent effect.
What do you think, Senator Axnes?
Well, I fully agree with Senator Armstrong. The fact that knowing that if you get a second offense, you're cut off from alcoholic beverages as it relates to wearing a scram bracelet. And I think that's going to be an effective way to prevent second offenses, third offenses when it comes to driving under the influence and just the intake of alcohol in the state of North Dakota.
Senator Elke, do you think that the mandatory participation in a 24/7 program in and of itself is going to be a deterrent for subsequent offenses?
Absolutely, I do. If I'm trying to pull up a picture of what these scram bracelets look like, I don't know if
we're on the radio, right?
I don't. Yeah, guys, saw it.
It looked like you're wearing a big brick around your foot.
I saw it on the radio. Well, it's not a big brick, but it's it's a significant thing. It will be noticeable. Long pants are going to cover it, but if you're wearing shorts, people are going to say, "Oh, well, I see you're not drinking," because it is 24/7. It's all the time. It is not something where you have to go into the local law enforcement center, check in twice a day, and do your thing in a cup and have your urine tested. This is something that monitors your body fluids like sweat, and it can tell if you've had a drink. So, and if you violate that, then what happens? Well, then now you have to deal with starting all over again. Probably going into jail for that extended period of time, and doing you're not going to want to do that. And if we can get people off of alcohol for an extended period of time, so they can understand that there is life beyond drinking, we will make a difference with this bill.
How did things come to this point from the original bill? I mean, could you explain to me the process that came about that led you from the original bill with its provisions that we've just talked about to what we have in front of us now? Senator Armstrong.
Well, from my personal opinion and experience, I had read both bills and understood that, as Senator Axnes had stated, there is a public mandate regarding these issues. As somebody who's been in this business as my day job for a long time, I just started working around with it, and I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination this one's perfect either. I mean, time will tell how well it works. But I just started taking notes about what I knew, and then started getting input from other members on the Transportation Committee and what they'd like to see. And I, with the help of Senator Elke and other members of the committee, I just started taking stuff from each one and writing it down and putting stuff together and seeing if we saw something we liked better than either of the other two bills.
How much work did this take, Senator Axnes?
It took an extensive amount of work from the Transportation Committee and the members on it. We opened the hearing and we listened to the stories from the families that have lost loved ones because of this. And it's moving, but, as policymakers, you have to take that emotion and then you have to come up with a pragmatic product that's going to be effective in doing this right. And, I thank Chairman Elke and Senator Armstrong for their work in making sure that we're putting something together that is going to be effective, that's going to be pragmatic, and to deter people from driving under the influence. Some of the information we had, that if we do not act this session, by the time we get together in 2 years, there could be up to 120 more deaths caused by drunk driving in the state, and that's unacceptable. So the work was cumbersome, but it produced a good product.
One of the things that we've heard a lot about in recent weeks is that North Dakota has almost a culture of drunken driving, if that's a bit of an oversimplification. But there is the idea that DUI is not that big of a deal. First of all, do you agree with that? And what do you do to combat something like that, Senator Elke?
Well, frankly, I don't believe it. I think it probably makes good news and good things to write in the paper or talk about on the radio. But frankly, I think North Dakotans are smarter than that. And I think they can embrace this whole idea. You know, from our committee standpoint, we made a commitment at the very beginning of the session, and we said, look, this type of committee is not something that's a lot of left and a lot of right. You know, we get bills in front of us that don't necessarily say, oh, it's a Democrat, oh, it's a Republican. That's not an issue. We are committed to whatever bill we get in front of us to do the best we can with it. And that's what I believe we have accomplished that with this. Now, it still has a long way to go because, you know, there is a bill in the House that's also winding its way through their process. We will see that one on our side of the fence eventually, and they will see ours. And I'm sure we'll be in a conference committee before this whole thing comes to an end. But in the end, you're going to North Dakota is going to have a product that I believe everybody can be proud of and look at and say, you know, once again, North Dakotans have a model piece of legislation here that other states can look at and see if they can do as well or better.
Senator Armstrong, do you believe that North Dakota has a culture that is tolerant of drunken driving?
I always like to explain as primarily like my district is we work hard and we play hard. I think we have a culture. I think we have a culture of alcohol. We don't see as many as the drugs and the things as, I mean, we're seeing more and more all the time, but I think North Dakota has a culture with alcohol that could be addressed to some degree or another, more so than just drinking and driving.
What about you, Senator Axis? What's your opinion?
Well, you know, to answer that, I get back to what I said earlier. You know, right now we're focused on penalties for drunken driving. I think we need to do more to prevent and deter the abundance of binge drinking and driving under the influence. And we need to make that investment up front, and I think we can take that path when the time's appropriate.
We've been speaking to Senator Tyler Axness. He's a Democrat from Fargo. He's a new member of the Senate. He's the man whose voice you just heard. We've been talking also with Senator Kelly Armstrong. He's a new member of the Senate from Dickinson. He's a Republican. And also the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee, Mr. Dave Elke. He's a Republican from Devil's Lake. We've been talking about new legislation to increase the penalties for drunken driving.